with all the lines crisscrossing the globe, and wondered why some flights go straight across an ocean while others take these, well, seemingly bizarre detours.
Mhm.
You're actually looking at the outcome of nearly, 80 years of really intense geopolitical wrangling.
Absolutely. And today we're diving into that hidden structure, the kind of invisible architecture behind global air travel. It's called the freedoms of the air.
9 specific rights entitlements, really.
Exactly. These are the nuts and bolts, the fundamental rules that dictate how airlines can fly between countries. It's about how they plan routes, how they sometimes save money, and basically how they build those global networks you were just talking about.
Yeah, they can make or break a long-haul route, right? Financially speaking.
Oh, completely. It's the difference between profit and, well, a very expensive failure.
And this whole system kicked off way back in 1944, the Chicago Convention, officially the Convention on International Civil Aviation.
Right. And you have to remember the context. World War II is ending. The U.S. has these huge, technologically advanced airlines ready to go, and they were pushing hard for essentially open skies, standardized rules, lots of liberalization.
But other countries were, understandably, a bit nervous.
Very nervous. They looked at the U.S. carriers and thought, hang on, if we just open everything up, these guys are going to dominate. And they were probably right.
So these freedoms weren't exactly freely given. They're more like carefully negotiated privileges.
Precisely. Their rights, yes, but granted mainly through bilateral treaties, air services agreements between two countries, or sometimes multilateral ones. Our mission today is to unpack these 9 freedoms, starting with the basics, the ones almost everyone agrees on.
And then work our way up to the really tricky ones.
Yeah, the rarer, more controversial privileges, the ones that honestly unlock serious global economic leverage.
It's interesting how the numbers themselves tell a story. Like, the lower the number, the more basic and widely accepted the freedom is.
That's a good way to put it. And when you hear people talk about open skies agreements, that's basically the furthest end of the spectrum. Maximum liberalization, where countries agree to exchange most, if not all, of these freedoms. Think within the EU, the European Common Aviation Area.
Or Australia and New Zealand, maybe?
That's another good example, yeah. But those are the exceptions, really.
Okay, so let's get into it. We'll start with the first two, the ones known as transit rights. These are just about passing through, right? Not picking up passengers or cargo for money.
Exactly. They allow passage, but without any commercial activity in the country being transited.
So the first freedom, the simplest one.
Conceptually, yes. It's the right for an airline from one country to fly over a second country without landing on its way to a third country.
Like our earlier example, maybe a flight from Canada to Mexico crossing over the U.S.
Perfect example. Sounds automatic, doesn't it?
Yeah, you'd think so. Just flying through the sky.
But it's not quite that simple. There is a multilateral treaty for this, the International Air Services Transit Agreement, IASTA, sometimes called the Two Freedoms Agreement.
Okay.
But, and this is key, only about 133 countries are actually party to it.
So who isn't?
Well, this is where geography becomes power. Think about large, strategically vital countries: Russia, China, Brazil, Indonesia, even Canada, actually. They left the agreement back in 1988.
Why? Why wouldn't they sign up?
Control and revenue. They prefer to negotiate these transit rights on a case-by-case bilateral basis. It gives them more leverage, lets them potentially charge fees, and control who flies over their territory.
Wait, fees? Just for flying over, even if you don't land or use any services?
Oh, yes. Overflight fees can be substantial. The U.S. FAA, for instance, charges based on the Great Circle distance flown over their territory. There are different rates for en route and oceanic airspace.
Wow.
And Russia, particularly for those Trans-Siberian routes, which are very efficient for flights between Europe and Asia, is known for charging pretty hefty fees. It's a significant revenue stream.
And the ultimate example of this leverage must be what happened in 2022.
Absolutely. When Western nations imposed sanctions on Russia over the invasion of Ukraine, Russia retaliated. They simply withdrew first freedom rights for airlines from those countries.
Which meant
Massive rerouting. Flights from, say, London or Paris to Tokyo suddenly couldn't take the direct polar route. They were forced south, over Central Asia, over China, adding hours to the flight time and, enormous fuel costs.
suddenly those invisible lines on the map became very real, very expensive barriers.
Exactly. It shows you how fundamental even this simplest freedom is and how politically charged it can be. Makes those overflight fees seem almost trivial in comparison.
Okay, let's move to the second freedom then. This one involves landing, but only for specific reasons.
Right. The second freedom is the right to land in a foreign country purely for non-traffic purposes. Think refueling or maybe maintenance. The crucial part is no passengers or cargo can get on or off there. It's just a technical stop.
With modern jets having such long ranges, I guess this isn't as common for passenger flights anymore.
Generally, no, not for the big intercontinental passenger routes, but it's still very widely used by air cargo operators whose planes might have shorter ranges or need refueling stops on very long journeys.
But historically, this was huge, right? There are some amazing examples where geography basically dictated global routes because of the need for technical stops.
Oh, absolutely. History is full of them. Think about Shannon Airport over in Ireland.
Right, the gateway to Europe for early transatlantic flights.
Exactly. Before jets had the range to cross the Atlantic non-stop easily, Shannon was perfectly positioned. It became a vital second freedom stop for almost everyone flying between North America and Europe well into the 1960s. Geography gave it immense importance.
It shows how tech and politics intertwine.
Definitely. Or consider Anchorage, Alaska. During the Cold War, flying over the Soviet Union was a no-go for most Western airlines.
So Anchorage became the bridge.
It became the essential technical stop for flights between Western Europe and East Asia, Japan, Korea. You flew up over the pole, refueled in Anchorage using Second Freedom rights, and then continued on. It was a Cold War artifact, really.
Fascinating. And there was another one related to South Africa.
Ah, yes. Ilha do Sal in Cabo Verde. During the apartheid era, many African nations banned South African Airways and even other airlines flying to South Africa from using their airspace or airports.
So they needed a workaround.
They did. Ilha do Sal, this island off the coast of West Africa, became a crucial refueling point, a second freedom stop, allowing flights to bypass the continent. Again, politics and geography dictating routes through these freedoms.
Okay, so those are the transit rights, basically about getting from A to B, sometimes with a quick pit stop. Now let's shift gears.
To traffic rights. This is where the money is.
Right. This is about paying passengers and cargo. And these are almost always governed by specific, often really complex bilateral deals between countries.
That's right. And the foundation here is the third and fourth freedoms. They're the absolute core of international air service.
And they usually come as a pair, right?
Almost always granted together in agreements. So the third freedom is the right for an airline to fly from its own country to another country. Think Qantas flying from Sydney to Los Angeles.
Okay, home country to foreign country.
And the fourth freedom is simply the reverse. The right for that same airline, Qantas, to fly from that foreign country, Los Angeles, back to its home country, Sydney.
Seems straightforward enough. You need both to run a round-trip service.
You do. But even here, the agreements get specific. They might limit the number of flights allowed per week, or the total number of seats, the capacity. Or they might restrict which specific airports can be used. You might get rights to fly to New York, JFK, but not Newark, for example.
So even the basics can be tightly controlled.
Very much so. That comes from the early days, the post-war agreements, like the famous Bermuda Agreement between the U.S. and U.K.
Yeah.
They set a template that was quite restrictive, focused on protecting each nation's flag carrier.
Yeah.
Lots of controls on capacity.
That protectionist instinct seems like a good segue into the fifth freedom, the beyond right. This one sounds complicated.
It is, and it's often the most contentious. The fifth freedom is the right for an airline to carry revenue traffic passengers or cargo between two foreign countries as part of a service that starts or ends in the airline's home country.
Okay, unpack that. An example.
Sure. Let's say Emirates flies a route Dubai to Bangkok, Thailand, and then continues on to Sydney, Australia.
Right.
The fifth freedom allows Emirates to sell tickets just for the Bangkok to Sydney leg. So passengers who have no connection to Dubai at all can fly between Thailand and Australia on an Emirati airline.
I see. So the flight originates or terminates in the home country, Dubai, but
Yeah.
they can pick up local traffic between two other countries along the way.
Exactly. And the original purpose was purely economic. For very long routes with multiple stops, especially before ultra-long-range jets, this was essential to make them viable. You needed to fill empty seats on those intermediate legs.
But I can see why the local airlines wouldn't like it.
Oh, they generally hate it. Imagine your Thai Airways. Suddenly, Emirates is competing directly with you on your profitable Bangkok-Sydney route. It's seen as potentially unfair competition, requires tricky negotiations involving at least three governments, the airline's home country and the two foreign countries.
Was this more common in the past?
Much more common, especially on routes between Europe and the Far East or Africa, up until maybe the 1980s when longer-range planes became dominant. You used to see these incredible multi-stop milk runs.
Like,
Well, I remember reading about an Alitalia flight from Rome to Tokyo back then. It apparently made stops in Athens, Delhi, Bangkok, and Hong Kong. And presumably, they were using Fifth Freedom rights to pick up and drop off passengers at each of those points.
Wow, that's basically 4 different international routes bundled into one.
It gave airlines immense reach and immense power. There was a very contentious agreement between the U.S. and Japan from 1952. It granted U.S. carriers almost unlimited Fifth Freedom rights across Asia out of Japan.
And Japan wasn't happy later on.
By the 1990s, Japan was arguing very strongly that U.S. airlines were using these rights to dominate routes that had little to do with actual U.S.-Japan traffic, like flying Tokyo to Singapore or Tokyo to Manila. It led to renegotiations and restrictions. That's a classic example of Fifth Freedom conflict.
Okay, so that's the fifth. Contentious, but historically crucial. Now, we get into territory that isn't even officially in the Chicago Convention, right? These unofficial freedoms.
That's right. These aren't formally defined in the original convention, but they've emerged through practice and specific agreements, and they're incredibly important for how modern networks function, starting with the sixth freedom.
The global hub connector.
Exactly. This is the engine behind hubs like Dubai, Doha, Singapore, Amsterdam, even places like Toronto for Air Canada.
How does it work?
It cleverly combines the third and fourth freedoms. An airline uses its home base to connect traffic flowing between two other foreign countries.
Okay, give me an example.
Think about someone flying from London to Sydney. They might fly British Airways, third, fourth freedom, or they could fly Emirates. They fly London to Dubai using UK, UAE, third, fourth rights, and then connect in Dubai onto a flight to Sydney using UAE, Australia, third, fourth rights.
Ah, so Emirates is carrying traffic between the UK and Australia, but it stops in its home country, the UAE.
Precisely. The traffic originates in one foreign country, transits through the airline's home country for non-technical reasons, i.e. to change planes, and then continues to a second foreign country.
Now, hang on. You said the fifth freedom lets an airline carry traffic between two foreign countries on a single flight number, like Bangkok to Sydney on Emirates. How is the sixth freedom functionally different if Emirates is still carrying London-Sydney traffic via Dubai? Why is one so controversial and the other the bedrock of hub carriers?
That's a really good question. The key difference lies in the structure and the agreements needed. The fifth freedom happens on a single flight segment between two foreign points, Bangkok-Sydney. It requires specific permission, often involving tricky negotiations between all three countries involved.
Okay.
The sixth freedom, however, is constructed from two separate third-fourth freedom rights that the airline already possesses, UK-UAE and UAE-Australia. Because the traffic physically connects at the airline's home hub, it's generally seen as a legitimate exercise of those basic bilateral rights. It doesn't usually require that complex three-way negotiation that the fifth freedom does.
So it's legally cleaner, easier to implement?
Much easier. And that's why it became the dominant model for long-haul travel, replacing many of the old fifth freedom routes. Airlines could build massive hubs by consolidating traffic from many points onto other points, all via their home base.
And naturally, where there's a successful model, there's often pushback.
Of course. Qantas, for example, has complained for years about the competitive impact of the major Gulf carriers, Emirates, Qatar, Etihad on the Kangaroo route between Australia and Europe. They argue the scale of sixth freedom traffic channeled through those hubs creates an uneven playing field.
It really highlights the power of geography again. A relatively small country, if strategically located, can become a massive global hub just by leveraging sixth freedom traffic flows.
Absolutely. Even if that country doesn't generate much origin and destination traffic itself, meaning people starting or ending their journey there, it can become a huge transit point connecting other much larger markets. It's pure geographic and network leverage.
Okay, sixth freedom, the hub builder. Now things get even rarer, right? We're heading towards cabotage. What exactly is cabotage in aviation?
Cabotage is a term borrowed from shipping, actually. In aviation, it means the right of an airline from one country to carry traffic, passengers or cargo, between 2 points within the borders of another single foreign country.
So flying a domestic route in someone else's country?
Essentially, yes. And this is where we hit the seventh, eighth, and ninth freedoms. Let's take the seventh first, as it's sort of related to the fifth, but simpler.
Okay, seventh freedom.
The seventh freedom is the right to operate flights between two foreign countries without those flights being linked to the airline's home country at all.
So different from the fifth, where the flight had to start or end at home.
Exactly. Imagine, say, Ryanair, an Irish airline, being allowed to fly a route directly between Madrid, Spain, and Stockholm, Sweden, with no connection back to Ireland on that service. That's seventh freedom. It's basically standalone international service between two foreign markets.
Still pretty rare outside integrated markets.
Very rare. Usually only happens within something like the EU single aviation market.
Right, which brings us to the eighth freedom, consecutive cabotage.
Yes. This is the right to carry traffic between 2 points within the same foreign country, but only on a flight that either originates in or continues on to the airline's home country.
Okay, an example would help here.
Let's imagine Air New Zealand flies Auckland to Los Angeles and then continues that same flight number on to New York. The eighth freedom would allow Air New Zealand to sell tickets just for the Los Angeles to New York leg of the U.S. domestic sector to passengers who are only traveling within the U.S.
But the overall flight is still international, connecting back to New Zealand.
Correct. That consecutive part is key. But still allowing a foreign airline to compete on a domestic route like LA, New York. Extremely rare.
Where does it happen?
Again, primarily within highly integrated economic blocs like the EU. Member state airlines have these rights within other member states, or sometimes special agreements, like the one between Australia and New Zealand. Outside of that, almost never granted. It's seen as giving away a core part of your domestic market.
Any historical oddities?
There's a famous one, Pan Am. For decades after World War II, due to the unique political status of Berlin, Pan Am, and British European Airways and Air France, had the authority under Allied agreements to fly routes between West German cities like Frankfurt and West Berlin. That was essentially eighth freedom cabotage, dictated entirely by post-war politics, not commercial agreements.
Wow, okay, so that leaves the ninth freedom, the ultimate.
The ninth freedom is standalone cabotage. This is the right for an airline to operate flights entirely within a single foreign country without that service being connected to its home country in any way.
So like Lufthansa deciding to run flights between Paris and Lyon, just a purely French domestic route operated by a German airline.
Exactly that. Pure domestic service by a foreign carrier. This is the absolute pinnacle of market liberalization.
And presumably the rarest of all.
Virtually non-existent outside places like the EU single market. Granting ninth freedom rights is a massive political step, basically treating foreign airlines exactly the same as domestic ones. Almost no country is willing to go that far on a bilateral basis.
So we've really covered the whole spectrum here. From just flying over someone's land, the first and second freedoms,
The basic transit rights,
to the core business of flying people between countries, the third and fourth.
the bread and butter.
Then the big strategic plays, the fifth and sixth, which built global networks and hubs.
Yeah, the beyond rights and the hub connectors.
And finally, these ultra-rare, almost theoretical rights of cabotage, the seventh, eighth, and ninth, which represent full market opening.
It really is the hidden framework. And you can see the constant tension running through it all. The operational need for these freedoms, especially the higher-numbered ones, to make long-haul flights work efficiently. Versus the deep-seated protectionist desire of nearly every country to shield its own national airlines, its flag carrier, from foreign competition, especially on lucrative routes or within its own domestic market. Open skies agreements are still the exception, not the rule globally.
So, thinking about this from the listener's perspective, what should you take away from all this? I mean, maybe consider the sheer economic power that's tied up in just the geographic location of where you live, where your home airport is.
Yeah, if your country happens to be strategically placed, like those nations that have built powerful sixth freedom hubs, and if your government has negotiated effectively, that location grants a massive, potentially decades-long economic advantage.
An advantage built entirely on these numbered negotiated rights. So maybe the next time you're looking at a flight map or booking a ticket, just pause for a second and ask yourself, which specific freedom, which number is actually making this particular flight possible?
And maybe even wonder, how much is that specific right worth to the airline you're flying with? It's often a lot more than you might think.